We are back. Not only is the list back, the Dolphins are back in the win column. Uh, my migraine muchacho, my partner in crime, one of two Panther fans I know that actually watched the team starting at the beginning of the season. Jordan is joining us. He is on the IR right now with a migraine. Jordan,
No,
how you
I was
feeling?
designated for return. I'm here.
Nice. And of course, our buddy Kev Fielder, the other Panther fan I know that watched from the beginning of the season, and who I'm also going to destroy in fantasy, will be joining us later. But we also have another special guest. If you are a Dolphins fan, definitely follow him on Twitter and YouTube. I call him the Dante Scarnecchia of Central Pennsylvania, Coach Eric Smith. Hey, Coach, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you guys having me. And that's a really high label to have. Always love talking to you guys. Looking forward to talking to you tonight.
Absolutely. So let's go a little bit back in time. We'll start with this. Jordan, you, Kev, and I, a couple weeks ago, we conceded defeat to the Bills, but we thought it would be a bloodbath.
Not only did we concede defeat, but we spent about 35 minutes replacing Mike McDaniel.
We did. But he impressed me. You know, everybody's going to talk about the Tua interception. And again, you and I have said this: when you get $50 million a year, you are going to get criticism. But what I also throw, and I've said this too, and you've seen me say it on Twitter, Jordan and Eric, you've probably seen me say this too. Zach Sealer has also been the bane of my existence this year. Rough to say, but he's getting a lot of shit from me because he got that big boy contract. And we forced a punt, a rare thing for the Dolphins defense this year. And Eric, I'll go to you for this too. Like he committed the number one sin of punt blocking, where you go up the middle and you leave your feet. But he's not been good. The D-line as a whole has not been good. Now I'm going to be easy on the rookies. Kenneth Grant, who I thought would be better than he is, but I'm not surprised he's struggling because I think I even said that he had some technique issues to work on. Jordan Phillips has been okay. But Eric, the only thing I can say to kind of have hope for this defensive line is we have two stars who barely played the last 2 years. And you hope as they get healthier, get back into game shape, which will probably be October, which we are in now, November, you'll start to see them play better. Is that fair? Is that fair to say something? Or Jordan and I being very critical of Anthony Weaver, who I do think has done a better job, and I still have some concerns, but I'm curious to see where you are with this defensive line.
Yeah, so I mean, I had high expectations for the front seven. I think like everybody did coming into the season, we were very much depending on this front seven to be the reason that the secondary, was not our Achilles heel. And the secondary has actually been better than I expected. Not great, but we haven't gotten the performance from the front seven to cover up the weaknesses that do still exist there. Talking about Sealer there and a lot of the guys across the defense, it feels to me like they're pressing a lot. They're trying to do stuff to make a play, and it's ending up putting them out of position. I did a post game with Hassan Patel on 5 Reasons, and Hassan brought up just how many new pieces are in this defense. When you look at all of the new faces in that defensive tackle room, you look at the fact that Chubb and Phillips really didn't play in this defense last year either. You do have Jordan Phillips or Jordan Brooks returning, but Terrell Dodson was only there half the season. The entire secondary is new. So these are all new pieces that are all trying to figure out how to play together. And I think they were putting a lot of pressure on themselves. I think that's kind of why you got that penalty from Zach Sealer, that, he had been struggling. And I think he was just trying to do too much in the moment and, where it really wasn't necessary at all. And even versus the Jets, when I'm watching some of the issues that still exist in the run game, there's certain times where a defensive lineman will have an offensive lineman stacked up, right, has the gap covered, and then he'll peek over to the other side, but the linebacker's already there. The back reads both of them, and the back hits that lane that has opened up. So I feel like what we've been seeing is just a lot of guys that are pressing a little bit too much, and I'm really hoping that the win that we had this week against the Jets is going to take a lot of that pressure off of them, and they can get back to trying to figure out how to play as one big cohesive unit.
Yeah. And Jordan, I'll throw it to this. Something that you and I have complained about so far this year. Why is Willie Gay not getting more snaps?
I don't know, man. I think Dodson had a much better game. last week, but he's almost the linebacker version of what we thought Jack Jones was going to be. It's either a really good play or a really bad play, when in reality, when we talked about what this defense was before the year, it's a defense that everybody has to do their job. That is the scheme. If everybody just does their job and doesn't try to be a hero, pieces are gonna mend themselves. You're gonna make the adjustments during the game, and you're gonna end up having your offense have a chance to win the game. But it seems like when Willie Gay does come in, good things happen. And for me, it's as simple as if you put a guy in and good things happen, then put him in more.
So we did get the turnovers. Now, granted, that was going against the Jets, who we'll talk about in a second. But for both of you, the last 2 weeks, and the team has played better. We had to say that. One really good team, one really bad team we've played against. Defensively, what do you guys find the most encouraging? And I'll just say this for me. I said even as bad as the secondary looked, you can find good corners. And I think Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas are – I'm not going to say they're a great cornerback tandem because that would be asinine, and that'd be being overly optimistic even for me. But I think they've proven themselves to be a very solid tandem. And I also think the one thing Anthony Weaver has done is he's simplified coverages, at least from my point of view. Now, Eric, Jordan, I don't know if either of you guys – well, Eric, I know you have looked at a lot of All-22 film, but Jordan, I don't know how much you have. But I'm curious to see if you guys see the same thing and what else has been encouraging for you.
I'll let Eric start.
Yeah, I mean, stuff has been encouraging. I do feel like there has been less mental mistakes in the secondary as we've kind of gone on there. You talked about the complementary style of Douglas versus Jones, where Douglas feels like he plays a little safer and Jones is a little more reckless. So you don't always want to have just too extreme one way or the other. Jordan Phillips playing well has been a nice, I won't almost say surprise, because a lot of people expected him to do well. I was really encouraged by that, and I know it turned into a 40-yard touchdown run by Justin Fields, but the play call that Weaver dialed up on that 4th and short was brilliant. Like, we got a free rusher in there and should have had Justin Fields down the backfield. So I feel like Weaver is kind of getting more dialed in, where earlier in the season it felt like every time that we were blitzing somebody that the offense was throwing into that blitz and just getting easy, quick completions. But these last couple of weeks, it feels like we haven't been as predictable in those scenarios. So for me, it feels like, Weaver is, kind of hitting his groove in terms of calling his defense.
And I think, Brett, like you said, a little bit to that extent, the most encouraging part of this defense is I'm sure the three of us have watched a lot of NFL football, and I've seen a lot of quarterback rooms or cornerback rooms in this league that are a lot worse than ours. And I think that in the beginning of the year, we kind of thought that our secondary had a potential to be the worst in the league, and it hasn't been to this point. I think that both Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas, if nothing else, they're going to be physical. And they're going to make the life of the wide receivers difficult. We have seen plenty of Miami Dolphins secondaries that you feel like even if we have a good number one corner, that there's a number two receiver that can kind of get his, and there are secondaries around the league where they're number two receivers that can kind of go off and do what they want. But Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas have both really, really come up to the challenge. Do I expect them to be all pro corners? No. But we're not giving up anything that the offense wants in every game. And I think that moving forward, the big theme that you're going to hear me say tonight, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody, is do it against somebody that's not the Jets.
Yep.
Okay. Once I see, what's up, Kev? Once I see this defense do this again against Carolina, and look, Carolina will be like the next block. Like, okay, the Jets are the bottom tier. Like, you have to do it against the Jets or you lose your job. The next tier is do it against Carolina that has shown a little bit on offense, showed a little bit of potential. Do it against Bryce Young, do it against them. And then the third tier, which is I know we always joke about it, but it's the we're back tier, is do it against a good team. Do it against the Chargers next week, not Carolina this week. So I'm encouraged, more encouraged than I was when we were screaming doomsday 10 days ago. But I think that let's pump the brakes on we're definitely going to go 5-3 because we still have a long way to go.
Yep. All right, Kev, just to catch you up, this is what we said. First of all, I gave you a great intro saying you are one of 2 Panther fans I know that watches the season from the beginning. And I also said that you're about to lose to me in fantasy this weekend.
Which is going to happen because my team's god-awful.
It's a 15-team league, so it's going to...
We got to stop that. I know we love everybody, but a 15-team deep
15-team league.
Like, woof.
Yeah. But right now we're just talking about the defense from the last 2 weeks. So, Kev, to let you jump in, what do you see from the defense that encourages you the last 2 weeks? What do you see that needs to still improve?
I want to start off with just mentioning that, can we pump the brakes on this Kenneth Grant is a bust thing?
Yes,
because it's been 4 games, and truthfully, I went back and I watched every single one of his snaps because I needed to see if PFF was lying. Surprise, PFF is lying. Kenneth Grant has been a good football player through 4 weeks. Has he been great? Absolutely not. Has he been this game-breaking defensive tackle? Absolutely not. But when you consider that a lot of what he's done is being the crasher on stunts and just holding up double teams and doing those kind of things, he's doing really well at it. And you're continually seeing his role expand. And I
also, just to interrupt you quick, he has had a couple batted passes too.
Yeah, he's impacting the game. And I get it, right? Tyler Warren is doing insane things in Indianapolis, and I think that's clouding how we judge rookies, but he's been good. We need to pump the brakes on this, we made the wrong, Chris Greer did it again, kind of. I don't like that. He's been good. Truthfully, I think the secondary last week against the Jets looked far improved. And if you consider that the biggest play that they had was some Garrett Wilson doing Garrett Wilson things with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, truthfully, I'm encouraged by it. I think Rasul Douglas continues to exceed expectations and continues to play like a starting cornerback in the NFL. Minkah Fitzpatrick is doing the little things that you'd expect Minkah Fitzpatrick to do. They need to figure out who's that second safety, whether it's Dante Trader, Ashton Davis, or Ifeatu Melifonwu, because I don't like this whole musical chairs hoping one of them figures it out. You got to settle on someone there. Jack Jones on the other side has been okay. He's going to have his bad plays. He's going to have his good plays. You just kind of got to live with it. The biggest concern for me continues to be that this pass rush that was billed as the quote unquote savior for this defense continues to struggle consistently. And it's not just Bradley Chubb. It's not just Jalen Phillips. It's not just Chop Robinson or Matthew Judon. It's everyone. And that's the biggest issue, is that if it was just Chop Robinson that struggled, you could just play more of Matthew Judon. You could play more of Phillips and Chubb. But when all 4 of them are struggling at certain points in the game, it's really difficult to win. Truthfully, when you think about what this defense was supposed to be, which is rush 4, rush 5, win with 4 and 5, give the defensive secondary a chance to win, they're not able to do that right now. And it's really hurting the entire defense. And so, truthfully, I don't know if it's that Ryan Crow, the offense or the outside linebacker coach, kind of pass rush guy, hasn't been there for the entirety of the season and most of training camp because of a domestic battery charge that still, while the charges have dropped, McDaniel said today that they're not going to bring him back yet. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's the fact that, 2 of them are coming off injuries. The other one's a sophomore and he's just going through a sophomore slump, but something's got to change there because first of all, Justin Fields did Justin Fields things against you. I'm willing to look past that, but when he does Justin Fields things against you and you can't get pressure, it's a bad day for the defense. And I don't even think the defense played poorly on Monday, but it's not a good sign when that keeps happening through 4 games. And the switch has to flip eventually, or whatever you think is going to change is just not going to change.
So I'll throw this to you guys, and Jordan and Eric, I know you guys are both coaches too, so I'll let you guys answer this first and then go to Kev. Something I've seen a lot with college teams that, quote unquote, have a lot of depth on a defensive line. sometimes fall into the trap that they're rotating too much. How much, like, do you think it feels like we're changing the D line every play, we're changing the set, we're not letting players get into a rhythm. How much do you think that contributes? And again, I have seen that happen for multiple Big Ten teams. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State kind of had it a couple years ago with their D line too. Do you think there's something to that, and they just kind of have to shorten the rotation for a bit?
You can take that one first, Jordan.
I think that they're still trying to get a feel for what this defense is going to be. And whether they're rotating every play. I mean, most defenses are going to change their third down package depending on if it's third and short or third and long. So now you're saying 2 plays on, 1 play off. I think it's until they find their rhythm. A lot in the ways that you see other coaches do it. It's early in the season, especially. There's going to be a lot more changing than there's going to be late in the season. I think as you start to figure out what that routine, what that rhythm is going to be, you'll see guys playing for slightly longer stretches. But for right now, I don't see much of a big deal with the mixing and matching.
Yeah, I agree completely. I was going to mention the whole early season thing, both in terms of a conditioning perspective and also the fact that, everybody goes into a season with what they picture is going to be the ideal lineups in their different packages, and it doesn't necessarily always play out that way. So early in the season, you're trying to figure out, how that fits in, right? And you want to try to make sure that when you get to those not only key portions in the game, but also key portions in the season, that you're able to put your best packages out there and they're fresh and ready to go. If we roll out whatever, we just choose 4 linemen and just roll them out there for 80% of the snaps from day one, then by the time that we get later in the season and, maybe pushing for playoffs or something like that, and those guys are falling off a cliff because they're just gassed over the course of the season, I think that's why you see that early season rotation. Also gives the opportunity for some guys to maybe flash a little bit and earn some extra reps, to the point that Kevin was making with the edge rushers and the pass rush that we expected. In my opinion, I think that those guys returning from injury is a factor. They're still getting back into the groove of things, and teams overall are still trying to find out who they are 3 to 4 games into the season. That's nothing unusual. But, when you look at the last 3 opponents and facing Drake May, Josh Allen, Justin Fields, you're looking at 3 mobile quarterbacks there. And to me, that kind of changes your pass rush plan. You have to be a little more disciplined, a little more under control in your pass rush. So I'm really looking forward to these next 2 weeks against the Panthers and against the Chargers, where those quarterbacks are a little more stationary. They have the ability to move around, but you're not looking for either of them to make that 40-yard touchdown that Justin Fields did. So I'm really interested to see how that pass rush looks over the next 2 weeks, when they should be able to pin their ears back a little more than what they have early in the season.
And even like Daniel Jones, to some degree, is still a mobile quarterback who can make you sort of can punish you in that quarterback run game. And so they haven't really had a game where you could just pin your ears back and try and make plays. And that's been a major issue. On the topic of rotating, right? Like, I think there's 2 trains of thoughts for me. You either have a Myles Garrett, an Aiden Hutchinson, a TJ Watt, who you never take off the field because they're your most impactful pass rusher, or you have a situation that's sort of similar to the Houston Texans right now, where you have 2 really good guys in Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson, but you also have depth that you want to play. And either you roll 3 deep, 4 deep, where, it's Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, a guy who's going to play 95% of the snaps, and then you rotate on the other side, or you rotate across the board. Truthfully, right now, I think the Dolphins are in that second bucket where they have to rotate across the board. Because Phillips is clearly not in game shape yet. He's getting closer and closer to it, but he's clearly not where he needs to be for a guy who's missed effectively 2 seasons with an injury. Mm-hmm. Similarly, Bradley Chubb, you see flashes. He's not there yet. And so you need to be able to rotate with Judon. You need to be able to rotate with Chop, because I think, as Eric mentioned, right, once you get to the middle of the season, you don't want to be in a position where those guys are exhausted, and then you're forced by nature to have to play Judon, have to play Chop Robinson. A lot of this right now is you have to survive. You have to survive these next few weeks. You have to be able to give them opportunities to get their rest. And then, once you get into the timely third downs or the 2-minute drill at the end of the game, right? That's where you can go out, pin your ears back, put your 3 best pass rushers on the field, tell them to go make plays. But to some degree, you also have to rotate in the first, second, third quarter so that in the fourth quarter, they're ready. Truthfully, again, the interior not creating any pass rush early on and struggling to create that pass rush is also hurting them. Zach Sealer struggles. I think he was a lot better on Monday night than he has been through the first 3 or 4 games of the year, but still, like you expected him to be a little bit more dynamic. You expected these other guys to be able to make plays consistently. They're slowly getting there, but still, it's just been a major issue across the board. And like Eric and like Jordan mentioned, right, like these next 2-3 weeks, I think tell the bigger story of it. If you can't get pressure against the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young at under center, if you can't get pressure the week after, if this is going to be an issue heading into that Baltimore game, then it's just an issue. But if it's just an issue because you had to play mobile quarterbacks and you're trying to keep them in the pocket, you're trying to contain, you're trying to keep them in a position where you can chase them down, I'm fine living in this situation. And so I need to see what it looks like Sunday, then the week after, to really judge where they're at in that sense.
Yep. Before we move to the offense for the last couple weeks, yesterday we waived Cam Smith. I don't think Jordan and I even had him on our final roster when we did that. I don't know if you guys saw the quote Mike McDaniels had when they asked him to describe Cam Smith's time in Miami. He said it was time.
I'm clapping because just putting it out there, Garrett Whitlock just struck out Aaron Judge looking. Thank you. You can continue.
No problem. But I know a lot of people want to give Chris Grier crap for that pick. I would not have taken a cornerback in that position, but Cam Smith, if you look at the draft board, was considered good value. He made the mistake of saying he was roommates with Chris Grier's son. Probably should have left that out. But he was a good prospect, but I think this summer it came out that he was still struggling with taking care of his body, which I get coming out of college, but you're year 3, you should be over that. But it also seemed in training camp, he was, no matter what corner came in, he was always behind them. He was behind all the undrafted guys. Who is that guy, Sheffield or whatever we had? He's behind him and Cam.
Kendall Sheffield.
He was behind all the undrafted guys. I'll just say it this way. I always make the joke, SEC brain is a thing. Like, they're not known for the smartest football players all the time, but once you get to the NFL, you can't rely on talent anymore. Everybody's talented and the scheme's a lot more complicated. Any thoughts on Cam Smith being gone? I know Jordan, you can give it, but I know you and I have basically been like, yeah, he's a wasted roster spot even being here. But anybody have any thoughts you want to give on that?
Today was I'll go really quickly, Kevin. I'll give it to you. Today was the end of the era for Miami Dolphins defensive backs, with Cam Smith being cut and Xavier Howard retiring, saying that he's now a man of God and that the Lord has drawn him to retirement. Kev, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I never agreed with this idea that Chris Grier made the quote-unquote wrong pick. Again, this is revisionist history hurting everything because, like, I think people forget that when Cam Smith was in the draft, he was viewed as one of the more quote-unquote safer cornerbacks outside of the first round of that draft. And most people viewed him as a higher floor, lower ceiling guy, right? Like they viewed him as a cornerback too, as a guy who would be a consistent starter. I think it was Lance Zierlein for the NFL Network or NFL.com sort of said that like his ceiling is a good cornerback too, which at the time, that's kind of what they needed, was someone who could just be a younger guy to bridge the gap, to give you 5, 6, 7 years of production. The injuries hurt him. It never turned out. Coaching changes hurt him. Scheme changes hurt him, right? Like this is the issue in the NFL, is you have to adjust to everything that comes your way, whether it's scheme change, injuries, other guys being brought in. It felt like it was the beginning of the end the minute training camp started, and McDaniel said that they needed to be able to trust him. They needed to be able to rely on him. That felt like the beginning of the end. And so, right, like, was it the right pick in hindsight? Absolutely not. Right? Like, this is a guy who played what felt like all the 5 games for you over 4 years. 3 years, whatever it was. Was it the wrong pick at the time? I'm not necessarily sure it was. And again, everyone's going to have a different opinion. That's fine. But I think we're forgetting that at the time, he was viewed as a surefire second round, early third round pick. And once you get past the first 20, 25 picks, that's kind of what you're picking. Like, this is not the Noah Igbenogany situation where you trade up, draft a guy who, like, most people don't view as a first round pick, but has a ton of upside and, like, could be the next big thing. This was a guy who had a high ceiling. It just didn't work out. Sometimes draft picks just don't work out. That's fine. The issue, and this is turning into like a whole 10-year thing with Chris Greer and whatever head coach he's been attached with, there's constant misses in the second or third round where you're looking for contributors, right? Like, if this was a one-time thing, everyone would be able to forget it because, hell, Darius Rush was drafted early, and I don't think he's on an NFL roster right now.
I don't know if he made the team as a rookie.
Yeah, like, there are a lot of guys who get cut second, third round that people don't remember because either the GM has already gotten fired or you're the Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. No one cares that you mess up in the third round. But when it's constant issues, that's when it becomes an issue for a general manager for a tenure. Because if it was just Cam Smith, we would be sitting here going, wow, that was a bad pick. That kind of sucks. Yeah. But it's, wow, that was a bad pick. And they've probably had about 3 or 4 more in the second and third round that, like, everyone remembers. And so I hope Cam Smith finds a way to contribute in the NFL, right? And I'm not, like, ready to rule out his career, but right now, right, like, it's not good for the Dolphins because they could have really used some, like, weird development from him during training camp. It's not good for his career either because you don't ever want to be a guy who gets cut midseason because you can't come back from a illness, injury, the non-football injury list. I don't think we ever found out what that injury was. I'm not sure it existed, but it's never good.
We don't want you on the team, but we're not going to cut you just yet.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, but it's never good when that happens. And so I hope Cam Smith finds his way. And also, right, like, yeah, that was a bad pick. Like, I'm willing to sit here and be like, hindsight 2020, they should have made a different pick. But at the time, we were all excited that they picked him. And so, right, like, we're just changing our viewpoint because of the other context around it.
Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the NFI list deal kind of felt like they were just trying to stash him to see what they had on the roster, right? It's a way you're not cutting him and letting him go to another team, but you're also not using a roster spot while you see if Rasul Douglas and Jack Jones are capable of playing for this team, which clearly they are. So, like Mike McDaniel said, it's time. No reason to keep hanging on to him. For me, I would have much preferred the Noah Igbenogany thing where you drafted a high upside guy and the light just didn't come on for him while he was with the team, as opposed to, it's kind of rare that an NFL team has the intimate knowledge that the Dolphins and Chris Greer should have had, right? And when you talk about the reasons that it sounds like Cam Smith did not succeed, at least in the eyes of the coaches, not taking care of his body, not preparing, like, your son was his roommate. Like, how do we overlook that part? Like, that's the frustrating part for me, is that this was the stuff that Cam Smith seems to have failed at was the stuff that, you should have been able to bat 1,000 on, right? You go draft somebody else and you don't know their roommate, you find out later that he has crappy work ethic, he doesn't take care of his body, and that happens. But you draft a guy who your son is roommates with, and then you find out that he doesn't have good work ethic, he doesn't take care of his body, that just reeks of something that they should have known before drafting him.
Yeah. And I've said this many times, Jordan, you and I have talked about this many times. When you don't have a lot of picks, that's when, and now it turns out last year we had a bad cap. Now we're fighting with depth. The Cam Smiths, the Channing Tindalls of the world, even the Eric Igzakamas of the world, they stick out more. I will say for Cam Smith, I did want Tucker Kraft. But, I've been begging for a tight end in the draft for years.
I was about to say, Brett, you've wanted every single tight end that's gotten drafted over the last couple years.
But we'll go on to happier times. And as Finn's Wave says, actually, no, Dolphins Discord says, Mike called a great game. He's called 2 great games in a row. I'm not fully back on him as a coach, but I am this close to being back on him as a play caller. He has been, and Eric will go to you first. He has been doing what I've been calling for 3 years now. Run the ball, build off the play action, get Tua out of the pocket. And speaking of which, what FinWave said, Tua looks like he has his mobility back. Like, he's still not fully there, but he's moving like he trusts himself. And we can talk about Tua later. But let's focus on Mike McDaniel. Eric, what are your we'll split it up. What changed from the first 2 weeks to last 2 weeks? And how do you feel about Mike McDaniel, both as the play caller and as the head coach? And I'll let you do both because like I said, we spent over an hour talking about potential head coaching candidates last time the other three of us were together.
Yeah. So what changed? One, I think the opportunities in the game script changed. They didn't get behind early in the down in distance like they did in those first two weeks. This past week in particular, they added a lot more inside zone, which is something that almost everybody has been asking for. It was before it was, I don't know, probably over 75% outside zone, and then everything else was whatever was left. And this week it was more 50-50 in terms of outside zone versus inside zone with some other stuff sprinkled in there. So that was one of the big changes. I don't know how much his play calling has really changed, and that's a tough thing to really look at when you're just looking at the results, which is all that we can do. Like we can look at these plays and say that the plays were better because they were successful, right? But we go back and watch it, and I think that you guys have seen the way that I graded the offensive line this past week, which was not good.
We're gonna get into that later.
This past week, Tua was able to cover up a lot of that, right? And Tua was able to evade some of those pressures, was able to either complete it or throw it away, live to play another down. Whereas you go back to like the Colts game and the very first play that Keon Smith is in, Keon Smith is sitting in Tua's lap, and then you have the two blitzes off the edge. I think one was a sack and one was a sack fumble. Like that sets the tone for the entire game. So we were still getting plays that were getting pressures on Tua, but I felt like in a lot of ways it was more Tua making Mike McDaniel right in this game versus a huge shift in the way the play calling was. And then to the second part of that question, just in terms of Mike McDaniel, as a high school coach and in the NFL, like you can call whatever plays you want. And usually whatever play you call, you can sit down the day after the game with the film and watch it and say, if the players did this right, this would have worked, right? And it doesn't always happen that way. Usually every play, there's one or two players that don't do it right. 100% is probably more rare than people want to recognize. But the bigger thing I've been impressed with Mike McDaniel, and the reason I was not part of that conversation that you guys were talking about other places as far as replacing him and talking about different options, is that it really comes down to when the coach loses the team. And, Mike McDaniel's that quirky, weird personality that, for me, I don't know how I'd react to him as a head coach. I didn't know how he was going to come across in a locker room full of alpha males. And you got this, 5 foot, 170-pound guy, telling him what to do. But over the years that he's been here, there have been opportunities for this team to fall apart, and they haven't. Mike McDaniel has found a way to keep this team together. And even though they weren't winning in those early weeks, they were still playing. They were still playing hard. You look at the Buffalo game, and you could tell that in the Buffalo game, despite going to 0-3, that's a team that was still playing hard, whether it was for their head coach, for each other, whatever it was, right? But as we come out of that and they got the first win, this is still a team that is playing hard. And I think that's the biggest thing for a head coach, is to be able to keep a team from falling apart when things get bad.
Yep. Jordan, I'll let you back clean up because Kev has not been quiet on any platform in his criticisms of Mike McDaniel. So I will let him take this next one.
Let's just be clear. I had issues with the first 2-3 games because I felt like what Mike McDaniel has been best at since 2022, since 2023, is being the quote unquote weird play caller. And what I mean by that is mixing personnel, getting to some degree what some people, shout out JP Acosta from CBS Sports, the Mickey Mouse offense, right? The offense that is as college as it can get, training wheels, right? You're running that RPO post wheel flat. You're doing a lot of
Borderline
different
high
things.
school, honestly.
Yeah, it's very high school, but that's what they've been built to do. When you have that much speed, for me, it's playmakers, not plays. It's putting the ball in Malik Washington's hands. It's putting the ball in Jalen Waddle's hands. It's putting the ball in Devon Achane's hands and letting them make plays, not trying to draw up some really super special thing downfield where it's like after the game, right? You're ending up on Eric might like this. You're ending up on Dan Casey's Twitter because you ran some really cool play that like everyone loves. It's the fact that like when you have a track team on offense, the goal should be to get the ball in their hands and force defenses to defend you the length of the field horizontally and vertically. And through the first 2, maybe 3 games, I didn't feel like they did that enough, right? Like I thought that there were times where they could have gone 21 personnel pony with Achane, with Ollie Gordon, you know, force teams to go heavy with some of Achane's versatility as a slot receiver. I thought they could have gone 2 tight ends. I thought they could have stopped living in 11 personnel and felt like that was where they tried to live in a lot of the times. To Mike McDaniel's credit, something changed. And I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know if it's the fact that he realized what this team is, but we're seeing a lot more of Ollie Gordon and Achane together. We're seeing a lot more of Ingold, and this is where Darren Waller coming into play really helps. We're seeing a lot more of Ingold being able to be a fullback and not having to be the second tight end where he's running basics because you don't trust Tanner Connor. You don't want to call up Greg Dulcich, and Darren Waller's still hurt. But now with Darren Waller in the game, he's able to do some of that Jonnu Smith stuff from last season that was so effective, and it forces defenses to have to defend you a different way, right? And we've seen a lot more of that. We saw a lot more of that once Tyreek Hill went out as well, because they were able to open up the playbook a little bit more. You were able to see Ollie Gordon, Achane out there. You saw motions, you saw the shifts, you saw the stuff that made their offense so fun and so effective in 2022 and 2023, but you're seeing it a little bit more modernized. They're able to go 12 personnel, run the football, get 4 or 5 yards, and keep drives going, right? Like that's what was so different from week 1 against the Colts to now what were we in week 4 with the Jets. They didn't have to live, like Eric mentioned, in 3rd and long all game. They were able to live in 3rd and short. That's where Tua is at his best. That's where this entire offense is at its best. And so I will absolutely give Mike McDaniel credit. I'm not one to sit here and try and victory lap and try and find reasons as to why I'm not a fan of things. The offense was better. Is it still efficient? Is it still the most efficient thing on earth? No. But you don't have to be efficient all the time. You have to find ways to get the ball in your playmakers' hands and create plays. And that's what they're doing with Malik Washington. That's what they're doing with Achane. We saw a little bit more of it with Waddle and Tyreek Hill when he was healthy. They were just finding ways to get the ball in their hands and letting them make plays. It felt like early on this year, they were trying to have Tua do everything. And it was like, Tua, save me. And it's like, that's not what this offense should be, right? Like Tua, to his credit, can do a lot of things very quickly. That's where he does his best. But he also can't get to that third read as quickly as other quarterbacks. And he's not consistent at getting to that third read and finding that third read. Just a quick number here. This year, they've ran 21 personnel, which is 2 running backs, a tight end, whether that's Ollie Gordon, Devon Achane, Ollie Gordon, Alec Ingold, right? Alec Ingold as that second running back, 38.9% of the time. Last year, they ran it 29.6% of the time. So they're running the things that makes the offense creative a little bit more, and it's working for them. Now the next thing is finding a way to make that consistent, because now without Tyreek Hill, you have to find ways to generate offense for other guys, right? Like you're going to have to get the ball in other guys' hands, because the biggest issue that's been the Dolphins' Achilles heel for years is teams will just sit in 2 high looks. They'll run cover 4, cover 2, force you to beat you down the middle, run the ball consistently because they want to try and take away the Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle effect. They're going to live in that even more if Tyreek Hill isn't healthy, because they haven't been able to run the ball consistently all the time. So I think to some degree, it's not they have to run the ball for X amount of yards. they have to be able to threaten teams with the run. And I think that's where Ollie Gordon comes into play. I think that's where having a more physical back that gets the 3-4 yards, right? It's not pretty, but it keeps offenses on schedule. It forces teams to move safeties into the box. You know, you have to play a little bit more aggressively if it's not just 45 yards or 2 yards. If you can get the 4 yards, the 5-6 yards, defenses have to adjust and they have to play you differently. And so far, we've seen a lot more of that. And so, to his credit, right, like I think that's the biggest difference now is that they're doing that a little bit more. And now it's just taking that next step. And I think you have 2 really good games to take that next step. And it's finding ways to just generate momentum and finding ways to keep that going so that whatever happened in week 4, where you were excited about the way that Mike McDaniel called the game, keeps happening. Also, to his credit, we haven't had a lot of procedural penalties in terms of delay of games, illegal shifts, all of that. That was my biggest issue. And, well, we haven't. I think the only one we had last game was a 2-minute warning one, which I have no issues with because you're trying to milk clock. And so if you're trying to milk clock, right, take the time out, you don't get to keep them for next game. And so that's the only time we're having procedural penalties. I'm fine.
Yeah. And before I go to Jordan, I do want to say you talking about the Ingold and the fullback. I believe that was one of Eric's first videos I watched, which simplified when you looked at all the run plays from, I believe, 2023. Maybe it was 2023. It basically came down to Ingold and fullback good, Ingold not in fullback bad. But to go with play calling too, Jordan, to also throw it to you, and Kevin mentioned it, Darren Waller looks like he's going to make a pretty big difference, because I know you compared him to Jonnu, Kevin, but Jordan, he does stuff that Jonnu we didn't really do with Jonnu, which is the first touchdown, going over the middle like that. That is something even with Jonnu Smith we did not have. Not
just going over the middle, but going up top, you know, and being able to pinpoint that rebound really high and catch that thing. That's something that I haven't seen us be able to do in a while. And that's the biggest thing I think moving forward that I see from what Kevin said you're going to see change. Kev, what was that number? Like 38% were in 21?
This year they are 38.97% of the time, which is
in 21.
Significantly above league average.
So now you go from that one being Julian Hill or Tanner Connor to that one being Darren Waller. And if Darren Waller is old Darren Waller, which he looked like the other night, now is that sustainable over the course of the season? We'll see, but he looked really good Monday night. And if that's the Darren Waller you have going forward, are you going to miss Tyreek Hill? Yes, a lot. Nobody that we're going to bring in is going to replace Tyreek Hill, but I definitely think that whatever you do moving forward is going to be better towards what this offense does, being in 21 personnel so much and having a really good tight end in there.
Yep, and I do have to give Julian Hill his flowers. He's been good the last couple weeks. Jordan, you and I are ready to start a Twitter account saying, has Julian Hill been cut yet? Because of last year. But he has looked better as that number 2 tight end, almost a quasi Alec Ingold kind of. I think they've been having him do a lot more of the stuff Ingold had been having to do the last couple of years. But it was impressive. Now, Coach, I'm going to go to Eric. I'm going to go to you for this because I saw the PFF grades, and I'm like, nah, the offensive line, it wasn't good. I saw some really bad losses, but I'm like, PFF doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm going to watch Eric's video because I saw online, this is the first time since 2016 the Dolphins have gone back-to-back games without allowing a sack, without allowing a quarterback hit, got a 100-yard rusher. Find Eric's tweet. This is the worst the offensive line's played all game or all season so far. Admittedly, Jonah is not where I thought he would be. I think, Eric, I'll let you describe this too. I think that comes more to the position change and thinking too much. I'll let you expand more because you are the expert here on the offensive line. My impression of Jonah is good to very good run blocker, absolutely awful as a pass blocker right now.
Yeah, that's a good summary of Jonah. I mean, when you look at the performance of that offensive line, like the fact that there were 0 QB hits is mind-boggling when you look at the way that some of these losses happened to Larry Borum and to the guards. You know, the lowest or the worst performance of the year for me, you had Patrick Paul, who played okay, but it wasn't a great game from Patrick Paul. He had a really good game pass blocking, but he had some issues multiple times in the run game. So not his greatest game. Brewer had a solid game as he usually does, but then everybody else was bad. Like Larry Borum, that was the worst game that I have graded over the past 3-4 years that I've been grading. Like that, and I always refer back to that Jackson Carman game. Like Larry Borum this week was worse than Jackson Carman. Like some of those
He was
losses
who everybody was
were
afraid
just
of.
brutal. And then, Cole Strange had some really bad losses of his own. Again, they didn't result in quarterback hits or quarterback sacks. So they kind of get overlooked. I thought as the game went on, he got a little bit better because most of the negative marks I had for him were earlier in the game, but his overall grade wasn't any worse than what we've had out there, but it wasn't necessarily better either. And that, in context, I would roll him out there again next week and hope that improves, since it did improve as the game went on. But then as we get into Jonah, I have less – I'm less on board with the idea of him playing on the left side is a significant issue for him. And the reason I say that is because he's been there from day one of being on the team. Like we've seen the Dolphins take Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, Liam Eichenberg, and bounce them all over the place. And we can use the excuse for those guys, even Keon Smith, bouncing around all over the place, can't get comfortable. But it felt like they were doing things the right way, that you're taking him and you're putting him at left guard from day one that he arrives in the facility, and that's all that he's played. So I feel like by now that can't be an excuse anymore. We see other college linemen coming to the NFL and flip sides. Look at Joe Alt, right? He had to do it coming out. Just one example. There's obviously lots of those examples, but this is a guy that we weren't flopping back and forth. It's not like he came in and we're like, we're going to try it on the left. We're going to put you on the right. Okay, you're going back to the left. He's been left guard the entire time. For me, the bigger issue is less with Jonah and more with the idea that he was supposed to be your fifth offensive lineman. When you have Patrick Paul, when you have Aaron Brewer, I'm going to let her out quick. When you have Aaron Brewer, James Daniels, and Austin Jackson, Jonah is supposed to be the fifth guy in your offensive line. He's that guy that you can slide some protection to. You can cover him up a little bit. But, before we even start walking out of the first drive of the game, we're already down James Daniels. Then we're down Austin Jackson. Now you have your whole right side of the line that you have to cover up for, and you're no longer able to protect the rookie. Some of the stuff feels very elementary, like some of the stuff when he's oversetting, right, or he's just not getting where he needs to be. But they're also, and I don't know how to quantify saying that somebody looks like they're playing unsure, but he's not playing aggressively. In the pass in pass protection. In the run game, he has had some good reps, but in the pass game, like he just looks very unsure of himself. And, I just feel like a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're having to put him on an island more than what they would have pictured, wanting to do. With all that said, he has graded out very bad for me. He had some really bad grades in the preseason. Week 1 wasn't awful, but then he had 2 awful grades in weeks 2 and 3. Week 4 was actually not an awful game for me in terms of grading him, right? So again, as we talk about these next two games and the things I'm optimistic about, seeing Jonah have a better game, I don't want to say a good game against the Jets, gives me a little bit of optimism that we can still see him improve as we get through a few more of these soft teams before we get into the tough part of our schedule.
Eric, real quick, this is something I've always thought probably doesn't help offensive linemen, but I wonder if it could help a guy like Jonah. Is there any idea to letting him sit and just clear his mind. Because if like we can't tell if this is a mental thing, right? Like I'm not in the room with Butch, with Mike McDaniel, with Jonah. I can't say if it's a mental thing. But do you think it hurts a guy like Jonah if you have to take him out the game, be like, hey, we need to reset this, right? Like clearly you're just getting beat too much. Like it's hurting the offense. It's probably like you don't want to be the rookie who's hurting the team. Of course, they don't really have a backup guard without Liam Eichenberg, but I do still wonder if a guy like Brunskill or if a guy like Keon Smith, even if they're not significantly better, does it give you a chance to like let him sit and rest, or are these just issues that have to get cleaned up with playing more? Because if it's just issues that need to get cleaned up with playing more, nothing is going to change if you just sit him and be like, well, we'll figure this out again later. But are these issues things that are just fundamental, get cleaned up in practice, or are these he hasn't faced NFL level guys for more than 4 weeks? You just kind of have to deal with the punches and hope it gets better, because I think Mike McDaniel did say, right, like they kind of figured out what the issues were and now they have to be able to implement it. So what's your mindset on like benching him for a game or two and just saying, hey, you need to reset, we need to reset, right? Like it's just going to be a time for us to sit down and figure out what the issues are and whether we can correct them.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that type of conversation. I mean, one is, are we doing what is going to benefit the player versus what is going to benefit the team? Right, none of us can say how Jonah would react to that. And that can differentiate between players. And from my experience, like right now, we have a freshman center starting on our varsity team, and the kid is struggling, right? But he has the type of personality that we can push him. Right? We know that we're not going to break him by letting him continue to play under that pressure. He is going to continue to work. He is going to continue to improve, and we are going to see long-term gains by taking the growing pains with him out there now. So whether Jonah is that type of player, I don't know. But as you alluded to, and my question, had you not gotten to it, was going to be, by now, I'd have probably certainly considered benching Jonah to see how that would go, how he'd react to that. But the flip side of it is, who are you benching him for? We've had the other guys in there. We've seen how bad they have been already. And I don't think that there is a very high ceiling there. Right? If you go to Daniel Brunskill, he didn't perform great in his spot duty there. And, I don't want to put too much weight into it because he really didn't practice a whole lot of guard before that. But he's got plenty of tape that exactly what he is. And I feel like if they felt that he was a starting caliber guard at this point, he'd have gotten much more time than he has already this season. Keon Smith, they have given him a lot of opportunities now, and the improvement has not been there. Liam Eichenberg, I think, would be better than what Jonah is now, but he's not available. Andrew Myers, another one that could possibly have potential at guard, but he's not available now. So maybe when one or both of those guys return, if Jonah is still having similar level struggles, then maybe you can have that conversation as to whether you want to put somebody like that in and give Jonah a little bit of time off. But with where they are now, I don't think that with what's behind Jonah that you can pull him out of the lineup, even with as bad as he's been, and say we're a better team without Jonah in the lineup.
And I guess the other side of that would be if James Daniels comes back before any of those guys. James Daniels has experience playing left guard. Cole Strange, I'm sure, can play left guard if he continues to grow.
Yep, he's played all
Maybe
three
that's a
this year.
situation where once one of those guys come back, you can sit down and figure out what the situation is, because I do think to some degree, right, like you can't just keep letting the guy get killed out there, because if you keep letting the guy get killed out there, he's going to eventually just think he's going to keep getting killed. And so, like, I think there's probably a time where that does become a thing. I think to some degree you would have really liked to have the redshirt year that you gave Patrick Paul last year, where it was, Patrick Paul got to sit for a majority of the year. When he came in, it was kind of like, hey, it's really low pressure, just kind of figure it out. To Patrick Paul's level, Eric, I don't know if you agree. I think he's looking like one of the better left tackles in football now, with how consistent he's been, with his ability to climb, with his ability to use his size. there's a lot of things that I really like about Patrick Paul that like I do think having a year to just sit, develop, right, focus on that development has helped him to the same degree of like, hey, maybe Jonah needs that, but also personnel dictates circumstance. You don't have the personnel to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Keon Smith out there again. I've seen enough of Keon Smith for the rest of my life. Maybe you know what? Maybe we go outside Jackson Carmen one more time. Let's see if your three is going to be the one to fix that.
Now, if anything, you go to Kendall Lamb at right tackle once everybody's back, and then maybe you try Larry Borum inside.
That just feels like musical chairs for the sense of doing
it does.
chairs.
But speaking of Patrick Paul, Kevin, you were actually the most level-headed when we did the draft coverage last year. Jordan and I dealt with the complete meltdown. Everybody did. Everybody melted down at the Patrick Paul pick. I know you said he didn't have a great game, Eric, this week in pass pro, but he didn't give up a pressure, which is kind of surprising. But Jordan, even
pass pro was good, run blocking was not.
Okay, that's what it was. No, I apologize. But Jordan, like we talked to Ghost of Adam Gase last year. You and I talked. Everybody was so down on a Patrick Paul pick. And you and I said preseason, if he is just mediocre, it's a successful pick.
Absolutely.
And look what he's been. He has, like Kev said, like it might be a bit hyperbolic, but I do think early on Patrick Paul is playing at a Pro Bowl level. So.
Yeah, I think he's playing really well. And the conversation, and I know we've had it a couple times since, so we don't need to get too deep into it. The anger for me, and I know for you and some others, not for all, was that Patrick Paul needed a redshirt year. And going into last season when the Dolphins drafted him, the Dolphins were in a much different position than they're in right now. We were talking about deep playoff runs. And so drafting a guy and two guys, because really the chop pick and then the Paul pick, drafting two guys in a row that both needed redshirt years was a little hard to swallow. We all had such high hopes for the team. But part of drafting is obviously being able to have the foresight to look to the future and pick a guy that long-term is going to be best for the team. And while I don't think we necessarily got what we wanted this past year, this year, Patrick Paul has been more than we could have hoped for.
Yep. And to circle back to Jonah, too, I do think, everybody thought he was pro ready, and he's just not there. He's not the first person that's happened to. He will not be the last person. Look at Andrew Thomas for the Giants, who I think was his rookie year, one of, if not the worst tackles in the NFL.
And he was a much higher pick than Jonah.
He was, but when he's healthy, which is the big issue with him, he's one of the best. Contrary, on the other side, you have another guy who was picked by the same team, the Giants, and Evan Neal, who everybody's like, this is a safe pick, A+ pick, and they can't wait to get rid of him. There's a middle ground between there, but I think Jonah has the talent, and if you've seen the videos they've posted of him, even in the draft lead up, he has the mindset to get better. I did see during the game, another thing I was like, oh, maybe we do have to, as Eric even said during the game, it might be time to sit him for a little bit just to recalibrate him. But hopefully it's just also, and in fairness to him, he hasn't had the easiest start with the defensive lineman. DeForest Buckner, DeForest Buckner week 1, Milton week 2, who's now the highest paid D tackle. Quentin Williams week 3. Now he's got Derek Brown week 4. So it's not an easy start. But we'll go into week 4 now and kind of go in. Lost in a great win because it's always great when you beat the Jets. We lost Tyreek Hill for the year.
Week 5.
I said week 4. We lost. Yeah, we beat the Jets. Lost Tyreek Hill for the year. Probably next year too, if we're being honest. Because I don't care what Drew Rosenau says. There's no way he's going to be ready for week 1 next year. There is no way. And if he is, he's going to get suspended for PEDs because that's just that. With everything he had, like you compared that to Gordon Haywood Jordan in Discord. That was a bad injury. I actually do think we can do well without Tyreek. And in some ways, I think the play calling may be better. Eric will be back. I think he just lost connection. I want to see more Malik Washington in the pass game. I think he's added a lot in the run game. He has proven whenever he gets the ball, he's tough to bring down. Don't know if you guys saw this, but he even let it known that Mike McDaniel calls him Malibu as his own Debo Samuels. But I want to see that. I think Taj Washington will do well in the role coming up. And even Tua today name dropped Theo Weiss. So that probably means Theo Weiss might get called up this weekend. We did bring Cedric Wilson back. I'm fine with that. Like, I know he didn't live up to what we originally signed him for, but he knows the offense. I think we'll do well there. The Chargers are really beat up. They're on their third string right guard now. And their offensive line might be worse than ours. And by might, I mean, it's bad. I don't know if you saw this, any of you guys saw this, but their center, Bozeman, is not even one of the top 32 rated centers in the league. So, and he's a starter. And I believe they came off of giving double-digit pressures, where the only player who did not give up pressure was Joe Alt, who is now hurt. So he's going to be missing the game. I think everybody else gave up at least 3. And I think Joan only gave up 2, if I saw the stats right. So we're going up against the beat-up Chargers. It's Chargers next week, not this coming up week. But the Panthers, they're still behind on their rebuild. Ted McMillan looks like a steal, but Xavier Legette looks like a miss. They don't really have much on offense. I'm going to say this right now, I'm expecting a 2-touchdown win for the Dolphins to get to 2-3. Jordan, will start with you. We'll just go down the horn. So I'll go from my point of view, Jordan, Kevin, Eric. What are you looking for in the Panthers game?
I'm looking to grow on what we saw Monday night. I'm looking for more physical smash mouth football than East-West high school football. I'm looking for the defense, like you said, to capitalize on some of the areas that the Panthers struggle. And I don't care about 2 scores. I don't care how many points we score, how many points we give up. The only thing that matters is that we win. And I think that getting a win on the road, again, I talked at the beginning about my 3 levels. Level 1 was the bare minimum, that was beating the Jets at home. Level 2 is beating a team that is very beatable on the road. Patriots just crushed them. And then I think step 3 is next week. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a 2-score win. I do think the Dolphins win. I think it is a relatively close game and somewhere in the 3 to 5 point range. I do hope that the Dolphins are able to pull it out.
For me, it's really 2 things. First is I want to see how you adjust to no Tyreek Hill. And Mike McDaniel mentioned today that to some degree, maybe not having Tyreek Hill during the preseason benefits this, because now you get to do some of the stuff that maybe you did in training camp that you didn't get to use because you don't want to take Tyreek Hill off the field. Now you have no choice. Tyreek Hill isn't going to be on the field. And so I want to see what's the counter. Because if the counter is just Nick Westbrook-Akine out there, we're going to run the same stuff, the offense is going to get killed. The offense is not going to be able to adjust. You have to be able to find counters. You have to be able to find sort of like new twists to the offense, new things that you can add to it. And for me, that's going to more 21 personnel, using more 2 tight ends. Again, playmakers, not plays, right? Like, let's get the ball in guys' hands and let them make plays, because this is a bad Panthers defense. This is the Panthers defense that doesn't have a ton of talent in the back end. And it may be even worse because Chow Smith-Wade is, I believe, their nickel cornerback, and he's hurt and didn't practice, or like was limited in practice today. And so I think to some degree, right, like there is an opportunity for you to really take advantage. To that same degree, their pass rushers, I'm just going to be honest, and there may be a Panthers fan listening to this who doesn't agree, they've got the worst pass rush in the NFL. Patrick Jones second and DJ Wonnum are your 2 leading pass rushers, and they're both cool as edge 3s and edge 4s. not edge 1 and edge 2. And so the offensive line should also get a real opportunity to just take advantage, be able to maybe this is the game Jonah needs to some degree, right? To just play a bad pass rush and have a real reset of like, hey man, you can still do this at this level even if you're playing Bobby Brown and DJ Wonnum. But regardless, right? Like I think that's an opportunity. To the flip side, something we've talked about. What's the pass rush look like now? I do like Carolina's tackles. Taylor Moton and Ike Ekwonu are both good football players. They also have Damian Lewis, who they paid a lot of money to 2 off seasons ago, who's a solid player. But
And
without
Brady
Robert Hunt on the
Christensen.
field, it's Brady Christensen and Cade Mays. There should be an opportunity for you to get pass rush advantage through the interior at center and left guard, which should help things. And I just want to see if that's a thing where it's like, again, now you're not playing a quarterback who's going to move around, make a lot of stupid plays, break contain and run 40 yards down the field, and you're wondering how the hell he did it. Shout out Justin Fields. Might be the coolest running back in the NFL. But I just want to see how this looks now that you have a quarterback where you can tee up on them. And hopefully, I don't know what the score is going to be. I don't care what the score is. Process over the results for me when you're looking for a second win. But hopefully you're in more situations where you can just tee up, where it's not having to worry about 3rd and 3. Maybe they run the ball, and then you can't be as quick off the edge, because that's where Chop Robinson really benefits. That's where Jalen Phillips really benefits. I want to see him more 3rd and longs, where those guys can just be able to make plays. You can tee up, have them make plays. Maybe it's not sacks, it's pressures, but it's just something to build upon as you get into a stretch of the year where you should be able to steal some wins or win some games. Because after this game, right, like you get a Chargers team that's looked good, not great. You get a bad Falcons team, you get a bad Browns team, right? Like there are opportunities to win games in that stretch. And so I want to see what it looks like pass rush wise and offensively, just the process of how do you adjust without Tyreek Hill, because that's the biggest question mark. This team hasn't had to live without Tyreek Hill for a long stretch in a while. And now you have to live without him for the entirety of the season. And there's no way that he can come into the game and be a decoy. He's out, right? Like you're not going to pull him out in crutches and have him go run a 5-yard dig. And so to some degree, right, like you have to find a way to adjust. I want to see what that adjustment looks like.
Yeah, I mean, would end up reiterating a lot of the stuff that's been said. Obviously, the replacement of Tyreek Hill and how that works is one of the big things that everybody's going to be looking at. Is that more of the fast 21 personnel where you have Ollie Gordon and Devon Achane in the game together? Is that a bigger package for Darren Waller? Is it Malik Washington taking on a bigger role? Or do they lean heavier on the run game without Tyreek Hill? All things that I want to see. As Kevin alluded to there, right, a good get right opportunity for the offensive line. Want to see if they can, they've had some tough matchups early on, but now as you're entering week 5, it's time to get your feet under you. So want to see them get a get right game offensive line wise. On the defensive side of the ball, would love to see them be able to get into those 3rd and long scenarios. Want to see if those edge rushers with the less mobile quarterback can really tee off and push the pocket and create an interception, right? Let's get our first interception of the week or of the year, coming out of this game as well. And I'm not going to sit here and declare a multiple score victory, but if you look at the way that Jets game played out, they had the opportunity to do that against the Jets. And if they can get into that same opportunity against the Panthers, then I'm going to be interested to see whether they can keep their foot on the gas, close the door, and get out to that 2-3 score lead where, basically they don't let the team back into it, right? I want to see them beat a bad team and kind of be in cruise control in 4th quarter without it ever getting back to a 1-score game.
All right. Excellent insight. And we are at going on an hour, 10 minutes. So we're just going to go the other way. So I'll give this, go Eric, Kevin. Jordan will be batting cleanup like he has tonight in the baseball.
There's going to be a game 3 tomorrow. It didn't end too well for the Red Sox. I would like to say, I would, and Brett, I never give myself credit for anything. I think I handled that very well.
You did. But you did. I was very impressed. But what we'll do is to go back and again, I'll go to you first, Eric. The one player you're expecting, that you're expecting to step up to help the Finns win, and I'll start and then go to Eric. I'm going to say Malik Washington. Everybody is going to expect Jalen Waddle to be the answer for a lot of people. It's easy to forget that he has proven himself with Tyreek to be a 1A, and the few times he's been without him, he is very capable of being a 1. And he's a guy who he just pops up when a play's needed. And so I'm not really worried about how Waddle will go. But Kev, you said this earlier. We need someone to step up. As I mentioned earlier, Malik Washington has proven that when he has the ball in his hands, he's not going down. So I think whether that is both in the extension of the run game, now in the pass game, getting more used, he's going to be a target. So I think he is the person who's going to open stuff up, but he has proven that he can make plays happen. Did it in the preseason, did it a couple times in the past game so far, did on a punt return and got a touchdown for us against the Patriots. So I think, and he is a guy the Dolphins fan base has been hyping up all year. He's probably mad now, though, because Maryland's star rookie quarterback shares his name, so now they're both showing up on everything. But I expect Malik Washington to step up and be the difference this week. Eric, how about you?
I mean, for me, the player that I would really like to see continue to step up is going to be Darren Waller. I think that he's the one guy. He brings that element of something you've been missing even with Tyreek Hill. When you look at some of the best teams in the league, they tend to have that guy that, when shit hits the fan, you can throw that guy the ball and good things are going to happen, right? And while Tyreek was here, that was, he was leaned on in that way. In those key situations, they were trying to find ways to create separation for him and get the ball to him, right? But now you get Darren Waller, who brings that big catch radius type player that, when you see Tua pressured, he doesn't have to put the ball in a perfect place to throw a receiver open. Now you have that guy that when you get pressured, right, you just got to know where he is on the field and you got to give him a shot to get it. And obviously he's got to continue to show that he can stay healthy and improve. But after what he showed in game one, that's a player that I would really like to see continue to expand his role and become that player that, on a 3rd and 6, down in the red zone, that the play starts to break down, and that's the guy that we see the ball going to.
For me, I want to shift to the defensive side of the ball because I think this is the game where Zach Sealer puts it all together, has a game that is vintage Zach Sealer, and I can see Jordan is really pissed because I stole his guy. So, in fact, Jordan, I will give you this one. I will throw you a bone because
no, it's okay.
No, because
because at first I had Darren Waller written down, and then I crossed off Darren Waller and wrote Zach Sealer, and now I'll come up with
No. I will throw you this bone because I did actually have a second player, and that's Jalen Phillips. I also think Jalen Phillips will put it all together today. I think you're seeing Jalen Phillips find ways to try and win. I think it's just a thing of him trying to get back up to speed, trying to find a way for him to go from maybe 75% to 85%, right? And just continually grow in that sense. And I think that's where the issue of sort of dropping him into coverage is trying to find ways to get creative so that he can impact plays. He did have a PBU against the Jets dropping into coverage. And so I think this is where Jalen Phillips puts it all together. And I don't know if that's multiple sacks, a couple pressures, right? I don't know what that looks like because I think that I don't like to count sacks, not stats. Sacks is like the go-to stat for edge rushers, but I think you'll see him take that next step physically and look a little bit more like vintage Jalen Phillips, which this team desperately needs vintage Jalen Phillips. This team desperately needs Bradley Chubb to look like maybe not Bradley Chubb from the Broncos, but be a little bit more consistent. I think he's been their best edge rusher this year, but they need someone else. And I think it'll be Jalen Phillips. Maybe it's Chop Robinson. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think it'll be Jalen Phillips who just puts it all together, has a good game, maybe pressures Bryce Young a few times, forces them into 3rd and longs, which is where Miami wants to live. And so I think Jalen Phillips is primed for that, not really breakout game, but a game that looks a little bit more like what Jalen Phillips is.
Jordan, are you going with Sealer again, or do you got someone else?
I'll do like Kevin did. I'll go half and half. So I'll take the second half of Zach Sealer, and say I think that, like you made the comment about the interior offensive line of the Panthers, and you're talking about an area of the team that the Dolphins really need to get better. On top of that, I saw Chuba Hubbard is questionable. Rico Dowdle has been a good backup so far, but I can't see him, or shouldn't see him, really running through our defense like that. So I'd like to see Zach Sealer step up and further his play from this week and show why he's now one of the top players from a salary standpoint on the team. But the other name I'll give you is Ollie Gordon. And I know that he's been for a couple weeks now kind of this darling, you got to give Ollie more touches, But I think that, and the answer was Sealer because I took the second part. I think that this is the type of game for two reasons. Number one, because, Brett, it's a game that you said we should win by 2 scores. So you should look to get other guys involved. But also, I think that the solution, while everybody thinks that the solution is going to be more Malik Washington or Taj Washington being active, we're now signing Cedric Wilson, or the power back or power receiver in Westbrook Akina playing a little more. I think the answer is going to be seeing Devon Achane going back into that offensive weapon role rather than just running back role that we've been talking about, and using him a little bit outside. And I expect to see Ollie's maybe not touches rise a lot, but I think his snap count will definitely be up this week at Carolina. And I look for him to really play well and set the tone and continue this physical direction that we're moving offensively.
Absolutely. And to go along with that, I've said multiple times, you're not going to win unless you can play that power football. So Absolutely. We got to continue that. Well, as we get to hour 17 minutes, Kevin, Eric, thank you for joining us. Eric, I heard you're going to be doing a show with Taron Armstead pretty soon. So
Hopefully
good luck
soon.
with that. Good luck with that. Jordan, I hope you feel better. I know how much those migraines can suck. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will be back at some point to talk. Hopefully, we're going to see if we can get 500 next week. So have a good night, everybody.